Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the stars through the main window. He had been patrolling this part of space for 20 years. Nothing ever happened here. The void sector was empty, cold, and boring. Just the way the Galactic Coalition liked it. Jake was a Zenthari, one of the 4 ruling species of the Coalition. His blue skin and tall frame made him look important, which helped when dealing with the smaller species under Coalition control. The Coalition had ruled the galaxy for 40,000 years. They knew everything about every world, every species, every threat. Or so they thought. "Sir, we're getting some strange readings," said Dr. Lisa Hayes from her station. She was human-looking, but actually belonged to a species called the Terrans. The Coalition had many species that looked similar. It made record-keeping easier. Jake walked over to her console. "What kind of readings?" Lisa pointed at her screen. "Energy signatures, sir. Big ones. Coming from deep space, beyond our normal scanning range." Jake frowned. "Pirates?" "No, sir. These readings are too strong, and the pattern is wrong. I've never seen anything like this." Jake looked at the data. Lisa was right. The energy patterns were completely unknown. In 40,000 years of galactic rule, the Coalition had cataloged every type of ship, every kind of weapon, every possible threat. This was something new. "How far away?" Jake asked. "Hard to tell, sir. Maybe 3 days at normal speed, but sir, these ships aren't moving at normal speed." "What do you mean?" Lisa checked her readings again. "They're moving faster than anything in our database, but they're not using any propulsion system we recognize. It's like they're bending space around them." Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. The Coalition controlled faster than light travel throughout the galaxy. No one had better technology than they did. No one could surprise them like this. "Get me Fleet Command," Jake ordered. While his communications officer worked, Jake stared at the data on Lisa's screen. The approaching ships were huge. Not just big, but massive beyond anything the Coalition had ever built. And there were hundreds of them. "Sir," called his communications officer, "Fleet Command is asking for all available data. They want to know if this is some kind of mistake." "Tell them it's no mistake," Jake said. "And tell them we need reinforcements, now." Over the next 2 hours, more ships appeared on their screens. Not Coalition ships coming to help, but more unknown vessels emerging from the deep darkness of space. They moved in perfect formation, like they had been traveling together for a very long time. Lisa kept studying the readings. "Sir, I found something in the old archives. These energy patterns, the way these ships are built, they match something from 40,000 years ago." "What?" Jake asked. "Humans, sir. The original humans from the Sol system, the ones who were wiped out during the Great Purge." Jake stared at her. Every school child in the Coalition knew about the Great Purge. It was when their ancestors had cleansed the galaxy of dangerous species. Humans had been one of the first to go. They were primitive, violent, and expanding too fast. The Coalition had burned their homeworld and hunted down all their colonies. It had been a complete victory. "That's impossible," Jake said. "Humans are extinct, we made sure of that." "I know, sir, but the patterns match. The geometric designs, the energy signatures, even the way they're moving in formation. It's all here, in the classified archives." Jake's hands were shaking now. If humans had somehow survived, if they had been hiding in deep space for 40,000 years, growing stronger while the Coalition grew comfortable, then everything was about to change. The unknown fleet suddenly stopped. They were still far away, but close enough that Jake's sensors could get better readings. The ships were even bigger than they had first thought. Some of them were the size of small moons. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "I'm reading life signs, billions of them. These aren't just ships, they're mobile worlds." Before Jake could respond, every screen on his bridge lit up with an incoming transmission. But this wasn't coming through normal communication channels. It was cutting through every security system the Coalition had, bypassing 40,000 years of advanced encryption like it wasn't even there. A face appeared on the main screen. It was clearly human, but different somehow. The features were sharper, the eyes more intense. The man wore no uniform Jake recognized, but he carried himself like someone who had seen things no coalition officer could imagine. "This is Captain Dan Miller of the Human Expeditionary Force," the man said. His voice was calm, almost friendly. "We know you're there. We know what you did to our home. You have one chance to surrender peacefully." The transmission ended. Jake's bridge was completely silent. Everyone stared at the blank screen, trying to process what they had just heard. Humans. Alive. Not just alive, but strong enough to cross the galaxy, advanced enough to break through coalition security, and confident enough to demand surrender from the most powerful military force in known space. Jake's communications officer spoke first. "Sir, should I contact Fleet Command?" Jake nodded slowly. "Tell them the humans are back." Outside his ship, the human fleet waited in the darkness. They had traveled 40,000 years to get here. They had grown strong in the empty spaces between galaxies, and now they had returned to the place where their species had almost died. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had become during their long exile, and Jake Morrison, Admiral of the Galactic Coalition, was going to be the first to find out just how much the balance of power was about to change. Supreme Chancellor Alex Rodriguez slammed his fist on the table. The meeting room on Coalition Central shook as the most powerful leaders in the galaxy argued about what to do. News of the human transmission had reached every corner of Coalition space within hours. "This is impossible," Alex shouted. "Humans were weak. We crushed them like insects 40,000 years ago. These must be imposters." General Bob Carter, head of Coalition military forces, looked at the data on his tablet. "The energy readings don't lie, Chancellor. These ships are real, and they're more advanced than anything we have." "I don't care how advanced they are," Alex said. "We rule this galaxy. We've kept peace for 40,000 years. I won't let some returning primitives destroy everything we've built." Across the galaxy, Dr. Kate Foster sat alone in the Coalition archives, deep underground on the planet Nexus Prime. She had been the Coalition's chief historian for 30 years. When news of the human return reached her, she knew she had to dig deeper into the old records. The public files about humans were simple. They said humans were violent, primitive, and expanding too fast. The Coalition had stopped them before they could threaten galactic peace. But Kate had access to classified files that most people never saw. What she found made her hands shake. The classified records told a different story. Humans hadn't been primitive at all. They had been advancing faster than any species in galactic history. In just a few hundred years, they had gone from flying simple aircraft to building faster-than-light ships. Their technology grew so quickly that Coalition scientists couldn't keep up. The real reason for the Great Purge wasn't to stop a violent species. It was to stop a species that might become more powerful than the Coalition itself. Kate read file after file, each one more disturbing than the last. The Coalition hadn't fought humans in fair battles. They had struck while humans were still expanding, still learning, still growing. The attack on Earth had happened when humans had only a few dozen colony worlds. If the Coalition had waited, even 50 more years, the outcome might have been very different. Meanwhile, Admiral Jake Morrison tried to sleep but couldn't. The human fleet sat at the edge of his sensor range, doing nothing. No attacks, no threats, just waiting. That scared him more than any battle would have. His science officer, Lisa Hayes, worked through the night trying to understand the human ships. Every scan revealed something impossible. The ships seemed to exist in normal space and somewhere else at the same time. Their hulls were made of materials that didn't match any known elements. Even their basic design broke every rule of physics. The Coalition understood. "Sir," Lisa called Jake to the bridge at dawn. "You need to see this." Jake looked at her latest scans. "What am I looking at?" "These aren't just ships, sir. Look at this energy pattern. It's like they're partially phased, out of our reality, existing in multiple dimensions at once. That's impossible. So was faster-than-light travel until we figured it out. Sir, these humans didn't just survive. They learned things we can't even imagine." Back on Coalition Central, Dr. Kate Foster made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in the deepest classified files, she found the real reason the Coalition had feared humans so much. Human advancement followed a pattern no other species had ever shown. Most species developed technology slowly, taking thousands of years to master space travel. Humans did it in centuries. Most species were satisfied with what they achieved. Humans always wanted more. They never accepted limits. The Coalition scientists had run projections 40,000 years ago. If humans had been allowed to continue developing, they would have surpassed all known species within a few hundred years. Their expansion rate, their adaptation ability, their refusal to accept failure made them unique in the galaxy. Kate found one file that made her blood run cold. It was a communication between Coalition leaders from just before the Great Purge. One leader had written, "If we don't stop them now while they're still weak, they will stop us later when we're the weak ones." The Coalition hadn't destroyed humans because they were evil. They had destroyed them because they were afraid. Kate tried to contact Supreme Chancellor Rodriguez, but he refused to see her. He was too busy planning the Coalition's response to the human return. Military leaders were gathering the largest fleet in 10,000 years. They would show these returning humans what 40,000 years of galactic rule looked like. But Jake Morrison was beginning to understand something his superiors didn't. During his long watch over the human fleet, he had noticed patterns. The humans weren't acting like conquerors. They were acting like they were studying something, learning something, preparing for something bigger than a simple invasion. Late that night, Jake's communications officer woke him up. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet." Jake hurried to the bridge. Captain Dan Miller's face appeared on the screen again, but this time he looked tired, almost sad. "Admiral Morrison," Miller said, "I know you're listening. I know you're scared. You should be. But not for the reasons you think." Jake found himself speaking before he could stop himself. "What do you want?" Miller smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "We want to save you, all of you, even after what your ancestors did to us." "Save us from what?" "From what's coming. We didn't return for revenge, Admiral. We returned because something followed us here. Something that will destroy everything in this galaxy if we don't work together." The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew looked confused and frightened. Dr. Kate Foster finally reached General Carter with her findings. She told him everything she had discovered about the real history of human extinction. She explained how advanced humans had actually been, how quickly they had been developing. "General," she said, "if humans survived 40,000 years in deep space, if they kept advancing at the same rate they showed before the Purge, then they're not the same species we destroyed. They're something we can't even comprehend." Carter listened to her report, then made the call that would change everything. He contacted Supreme Chancellor Rodriguez with a simple message. "Sir, we may have made a terrible mistake." But Rodriguez wasn't listening to anyone. He had already given the order. The Coalition's greatest fleet was moving toward the human ships. The war he thought would be easy was about to begin. And somewhere in deep space, behind the human fleet, massive shapes moved through the darkness. Things that had followed humanity across the void, hungry things that had destroyed entire galaxies. The humans knew they were coming. That's why they had returned home, not to conquer, but to protect the galaxy that had once tried to destroy them. Time was running out for everyone. The Coalition fleet was the largest gathering of warships in 10,000 years. Over 500 vessels from every corner of the galaxy moved toward the human fleet. Supreme Chancellor Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his forces prepare for battle. "This will show them," he said to General Carter. "We didn't rule the galaxy for 40,000 years by being weak." But General Carter was reading Dr. Kate Foster's reports again. Everything she had found in the archives painted a different picture of what humans had been and what they might have become. "Chancellor," Carter said carefully, "maybe we should try talking to them first." "We don't negotiate with terrorists," Rodriguez replied. "They demand our surrender. We'll give them death instead." Light years away, Admiral Jake Morrison received new orders. He was to join the main fleet and help destroy the human ships. But Jake couldn't forget Captain Miller's words about saving the galaxy from something worse. Jake opened a private channel to the human fleet. It was against orders, but he had to know the truth. "Captain Miller, this is Admiral Morrison. I'm listening." Miller's face appeared on the screen, and Jake saw something in his eyes that looked like respect. "Admiral, I'm glad you contacted me. We don't have much time." "Time for what?" Miller's image changed. Instead of his ship's bridge, Jake saw something impossible. It looked like space, but wrong somehow. Stars were being eaten by darkness, entire solar systems disappearing into nothing. "This is what destroyed the Andromeda Galaxy," Miller said. "We call them the Void Eaters. They consume reality itself, leaving empty space where matter used to exist." Jake stared at the images. "What does this have to do with us?" "They followed our trail here, 40,000 years ago, when your ancestors scattered my people to the edges of space. Some of us escaped beyond this galaxy. We traveled farther than anyone had gone before. We found allies, learned new technologies, grew stronger." The image changed again, showing massive structures moving through the darkness between galaxies. "But we also found enemies. The Void Eaters have been following us for thousands of years. They're drawn to advanced civilizations, to places where reality is rich and complex. And now they're almost here." Jake felt cold fear creep up his spine. "How long do we have?" "Days, maybe weeks. They're already at the galaxy's edge, testing our defenses." Dr. Kate Foster was working frantically in her office, trying to contact anyone who would listen. She had found more files, older ones that went back to the very beginning of Coalition history. The Coalition hadn't always been the only power in the galaxy. There had been other civilizations, older ones that had suddenly vanished without explanation. The official records said they had destroyed themselves in wars, but Kate was finding evidence of something else. Ancient sensor logs showed the same energy patterns that Jake's ship was detecting now. The same reality-bending distortions that marked the approach of something that didn't belong in normal space. Kate finally reached Dr. Lisa Hayes on Morrison's ship. "Lisa, you need to hear this. The Coalition has faced this threat before." "What do you mean?" "The missing civilizations, the ones that supposedly destroyed themselves. They didn't destroy themselves. Something else destroyed them. Something that matches what we're seeing now." Meanwhile, Captain Miller was explaining humanity's transformation to Admiral Morrison. The humans who had escaped the Great Purge hadn't just survived in the empty spaces between galaxies. They had encountered beings of pure energy, ancient machines and life forms that existed in multiple dimensions at once. "We learned from all of them," Miller said. "We became something new. Not just human anymore, but not entirely alien either. We kept what made us human while gaining abilities that let us fight threats like the Void Eaters." "What kind of abilities?" Miller's ship suddenly flickered, seeming to exist in several places at once. "We can phase between dimensions. We can manipulate space and time on a small scale. We can share consciousness across vast distances while keeping our individual minds." Jake watched in amazement as the human fleet began to change. Ships that had looked solid became translucent, existing partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. "We spent 40,000 years preparing for this," Miller continued. "We knew the Void Eaters would eventually find this galaxy. We came back to protect it, even though you tried to destroy us." "Why?" Jake asked. "Why protect the people who killed your species?" Miller was quiet for a long moment. "Because that's what being human means. We don't let innocent people die, even if their ancestors were our enemies. And because we learned something important out there in the darkness." "What did you learn?" "That the universe is far more dangerous than anyone in this galaxy realizes. The Void Eaters are just one threat among many. If we don't work together, if we don't grow beyond our old hatreds, then everything dies." Back on Coalition Central, Supreme Chancellor Rodriguez was receiving reports that made no sense. Scout ships at the galaxy's edge were detecting massive distortions in spacetime. Entire star systems were going dark, their light simply stopping, as if something had erased them from existence. But Rodriguez refused to believe it. He was convinced this was some kind of human trick. a way to make the Coalition afraid before the real attack began. "Send the fleet forward," he ordered. "I want those human ships destroyed before they can try any more tricks." Dr. Kate Foster made one last desperate attempt to reach the Chancellor. She gathered all her evidence, all the historical proof that humanity wasn't the real threat, and sent it directly to his personal communicator. Rodriguez read her message and deleted it without responding. He had made his decision. The humans would pay for daring to return to Coalition space. The Coalition fleet moved into attack position, weapons powered and ready. But as they approached the human ships, something else appeared on their sensors. Something vast and dark moving through space at impossible speed. Admiral Morrison was the first to see it clearly. A wave of absolute nothingness was approaching from the galaxy's edge, consuming everything in its path. Stars, planets, even empty space itself was being devoured by something that existed beyond normal reality. "Captain Miller," Jake called, desperately. "Is that them?" "Yes," Miller replied. "The Void Eaters have arrived. Now you understand why we came back." The human fleet began to move, not toward the Coalition ships, but toward the approaching darkness. They were positioning themselves between the galaxy and its destroyers, ready to fight a war that would determine whether anything in the Milky Way would survive. Miller's final transmission reached every ship in the Coalition fleet. "You can shoot us in the back while we fight to save you, or you can help us save your galaxy. Choose quickly. Time is running out for all of us." The darkness was spreading faster now, consuming entire solar systems in minutes. The war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin, and humanity was the only thing standing between the Coalition and complete annihilation. General Carter looked at the approaching void and made a decision that would define the future. He opened a channel to all Coalition ships. "All vessels cease attack on human ships. Repeat, do not fire on the humans. We have a bigger enemy to fight." The real battle was about to begin. Supreme Chancellor Rodriguez refused to listen to General Carter's order. He grabbed the communication device and shouted into it, "All ships, ignore that command. Fire on the human vessels immediately. This is your Chancellor speaking." But many Coalition captains were already seeing the approaching darkness on their screens. They watched entire star systems disappear, consumed by something that shouldn't exist. Fear was stronger than orders. Captain Sarah Bell of the Coalition cruiser Thunder Bay was the first to make her choice. She powered down her weapons and turned her ship toward the advancing void. "This is Captain Bell to all Coalition vessels," she broadcast. "I'm joining the humans. Whatever they are, they're not our real enemy." More ships followed her lead. Within minutes, half the Coalition fleet had stopped targeting the humans and started moving toward the true threat. Rodriguez screamed with rage, but his own flagship captain quietly powered down their weapons too. Even Rodriguez's most loyal officers could see what was coming for them all. Admiral Jake Morrison felt relief wash over him as he watched Coalition ships joining the human formation. But his relief turned to horror as he got a closer look at the Void Eaters. They weren't ships or creatures in any normal sense. They were tears in reality itself, holes in the universe that moved with purpose and intelligence. Where they passed, everything simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not broken, just gone as if it had never been there at all. Captain Dan Miller's voice reached every ship in the combined fleet. "All vessels, listen carefully. These things don't fight the way you understand fighting. They don't have weapons or shields. They eat the space around them, the matter, even the energy that holds atoms together." Jake watched his sensors as the darkness came closer. "How do we fight something like that?" "By becoming something they can't eat," Miller replied. "We're going to share our technology with you. It's going to hurt, and it's going to change you, but it's the only way to survive." Before Jake could ask what he meant, a wave of energy passed through his ship. It didn't damage anything, but every person on board suddenly felt different. Jake's mind expanded, filled with knowledge and memories that weren't his own. He saw through human eyes as Earth burned 40,000 years ago. He felt the terror of families fleeing into deep space, the desperation of survivors who refused. to give up. But he also experienced what came after. The long journey to the edge of the galaxy, the meeting with alien minds that existed beyond normal space, the slow transformation of humanity into something greater. All across the Coalition fleet, the same thing was happening. Soldiers and officers were experiencing human memories, understanding for the first time what their ancestors had really done. But more importantly, they were gaining new abilities. Dr. Lisa Hayes gasped as her consciousness suddenly expanded. She could feel the thoughts of other crew members, sense the energy patterns of nearby ships, even perceive the approaching Void Eaters in ways her normal senses couldn't detect. "Sir," she called to Jake, "I can see them clearly now. They're not just eating matter. They're eating the connections between things, the forces that hold reality together." Jake nodded. He could see it too now, with his enhanced perception. The Void Eaters were like cosmic cancer, consuming the fundamental structure of existence itself. The human fleet began to change, their ships flickering in and out of normal space. Captain Miller's voice came through the communication system again, but now Jake could hear it in his mind as well as through his ears. "Phase your ships now. Don't try to understand how. Just let your new knowledge guide you." Jake closed his eyes and reached out with abilities he didn't know he had. Around him, his ship began to shift, existing partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that had no names. The Coalition ships were learning fast. Vessels that had been solid metal constructs moments before were now flickering between realities, their crews working together in ways that shouldn't be possible. Dr. Kate Foster, still in her office on Coalition Central, felt the change happen to her too. Suddenly she could access not just the Coalition archives, but human memories stretching back 40,000 years. She saw the true history of the galaxy, the real reason why so many ancient civilizations had vanished. The Void Eaters had been hunting advanced species for millions of years. Whenever a civilization grew too complex, too connected to the fundamental forces of reality, the Void Eaters would find them and consume them. But humanity had learned something that no other species had discovered. They had learned how to evolve, without being detected, how to grow beyond the reach of cosmic predators. The first battle began as the Void Eaters reached the outer edge of the fleet. Coalition ships that hadn't fully phased were touched by the advancing darkness and simply ceased to exist. But the ships that had successfully shifted between dimensions remained safe. Captain Miller led the attack, his ship diving into the void like a spear of light. Where human weapons struck the Void Eaters, reality fought back, pushing the darkness away from normal space. Jake found himself fighting alongside beings he had considered enemies just hours before. His ship moved through dimensions he couldn't name, striking at enemies that existed beyond normal physics. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships phased in and out of existence, weapons that fired pure mathematics at targets made of anti-reality, crews that shared consciousness across vast distances while maintaining their individual identities. But the Void Eaters were learning too. They began to adapt, finding ways to reach into the alternate dimensions where the fleet was hiding. "They're getting stronger," Captain Bell reported as her ship barely escaped being consumed. "They're learning from us." Miller's response came, not through communication systems, but directly into everyone's mind. "Then we need to evolve faster than they can adapt. It's time for the final transformation." Jake felt another wave of energy pass through him, stronger than the first. This time the change went deeper. His consciousness expanded beyond his individual mind, connecting him to every other being in the fleet while still keeping his own thoughts and personality intact. He was still Jake Morrison, Coalition Admiral, but he was also part of something larger, a collective intelligence that included humans, Coalition species, and even beings from beyond the galaxy that humanity had befriended during their long exile. The fleet moved as one mind with billions of individual thoughts. They struck at the Void Eaters with coordinated precision that no normal military force could achieve. But even as they fought, Jake realized this was just the beginning. The Void Eaters weren't just attacking this galaxy. They were part of something larger, a cosmic force that had been consuming universe after universe. Humanity had returned not just to save their old home, but to make a stand against something that threatened all existence. And now, for the first time in millions of years, they weren't fighting alone. The real war was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The battle had been going on for 3 days, but time meant something different now. The combined fleet fought the Void Eaters across multiple dimensions, in spaces where normal physics didn't work, and thoughts could become weapons. Admiral Jake Morrison watched as entire sections of reality were torn apart and rebuilt. His ship existed in 7 different dimensions at once, crewed by beings who shared consciousness while keeping their individual minds. It should have been impossible, but humanity had learned to make impossible things normal. The Void Eaters were learning too, growing stronger with each attack. What had started as tears in space were now massive entities that could reach across dimensions to consume matter, energy, and even the connections between thoughts. Captain Dan Miller's ship led the fight at the center of the battle zone. Around him, human vessels moved like living things, bending space and time to strike at enemies that existed beyond normal understanding. But Jake could feel something wrong through their shared consciousness. The humans were afraid, truly afraid, for the first time since they had returned. "Miller," Jake called through their mental link, "what aren't you telling us?" Miller's thoughts came back heavy with worry. There are more of them, many more. This is just the first wave. The real Void Eater swarm is still coming. Dr. Kate Foster, now connected to the fleet's shared mind while still in her office, accessed human memories from their time beyond the HFY galaxy. What she found made her understand why humanity had really come home. The Void Eaters weren't just destroying the Milky Way. They were part of a cosmic cycle that had been going on for billions of years. Advanced civilizations would grow and develop, reaching a certain level of complexity. Then the Void Eaters would find them and consume them, leaving empty space for new civilizations to grow in. But humanity had discovered something during their exile. They had found the ruins of ancient civilizations that had tried to break the cycle. All had failed, consumed when they tried to fight back in the traditional way. "Miller," Kate spoke through the shared consciousness. "The ancient ruins you found, they all tried to fight, didn't they? And they all lost because they fought the wrong way." "Yes," Miller replied. "They tried to defeat the Void Eaters by becoming stronger, more advanced, more complex. But that just made them bigger targets." Dr. Lisa Hayes, her mind now expanded, far beyond its original limits, suddenly understood. The cycle continues because civilizations always respond the same way. They try to grow stronger to fight the threat. "Exactly," Miller said. "But we learned a different way. Not to fight them, but to transcend them." The battle reached its peak as the main Void Eater swarm arrived. The darkness between stars was filled with entities so vast they could swallow solar systems whole. Their hunger was infinite, their patience endless. The combined fleet fought with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. For every Void Eater they destroyed, 10 more appeared. The enemy wasn't just stronger, they were limitless. Jake felt despair creeping through the shared consciousness. Even with all their new abilities, even with human technology and alien allies, they were losing. That's when Captain Miller made his decision. He opened his mind completely, not just to the fleet, but to every conscious being in the galaxy. His thoughts reached across space to touch the minds of coalition citizens, merchant traders, even simple farmers on distant worlds. "People of the galaxy," his voice echoed in millions of minds. "This is Captain Dan Miller of the Human Expeditionary Force. We are about to lose this battle. The Void Eaters will consume everything unless we do something that has never been done before." Jake felt Miller's plan through their connection and was amazed by its simplicity and its impossibility. "We're going to evolve the entire galaxy," Miller continued. "Every person, every species, every form of consciousness, not to fight the Void Eaters, but to become something they cannot consume." The plan was incredible. Instead of trying to defeat the Void Eaters with weapons or technology, humanity would share their transformation with every living being in the galaxy. All at once, creating a cosmic evolution that would make the entire Milky Way transcend the cycle of destruction. But it required something no species had ever done before: complete trust between former enemies. Total cooperation between beings who had never worked together. Perfect unity while maintaining individual identity. It will hurt, Miller warned. It will change you forever. You will become more than what you are now, but you will also remain exactly who you've always been. The choice is yours. Across the galaxy, beings made their decision. Coalition leaders who had ruled through fear chose to trust. Merchant species who had only cared about profit chose to share. Warrior races who had lived for conflict chose to cooperate. The transformation began as a whisper in the shared consciousness, growing stronger as more beings joined willingly. Jake felt his mind expanding beyond anything he could have imagined, connecting not just to the fleet but to every conscious entity in the galaxy. But he was still Jake Morrison. Still the admiral who had first encountered the returning humans. Still the person who had chosen to listen instead of fight. The Void Eaters sensed what was happening and attacked with desperate fury. They threw everything they had at the transforming galaxy, trying to consume it before the change could complete. That's when Miller spoke the word that changed everything. Run. But it wasn't a command to flee. It was an invitation to transcend. The word carried with it 40,000 years of human experience, growth, and learning. It spread through the shared consciousness like wildfire, carrying with it the knowledge of how to exist beyond the reach of cosmic predators. The galaxy began to phase out of normal reality, not disappearing but becoming something that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The Void Eaters reached for their prey and found nothing they could consume. Where once there had been separate species fighting for survival, now there was a unified consciousness that encompassed all life in the Milky Way. Individual thoughts, within a cosmic mind, separate notes in a symphony of existence. The Void Eaters circled the transformed galaxy like frustrated predators. They could sense the life within, but they could not touch it. The Milky Way had evolved beyond their ability to consume it. Jake stood on his ship's bridge, which now existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Around him, his crew worked with beings from across the galaxy, their consciousness shared but their personalities intact. Captain Miller appeared beside him, not as a hologram, but as a presence in shared reality. "We did it," he said. "For the first time in cosmic history, an entire galaxy has broken the cycle." "What happens now?" Jake asked. Miller smiled, and Jake could feel the joy of every human who had survived 40,000 years in exile. "Now we teach others. The Void Eaters will move on to other galaxies, other civilizations, but we'll be there first, sharing the same message that saved us." Dr. Kate Foster, her consciousness now spanning multiple worlds, sent out the first transmission to nearby galaxies. It carried a simple message, a single word that contained the power to break an ancient cycle of destruction. Run. Not in fear, but toward growth. Not away from danger, but beyond the reach of limitation. The word spread across the cosmic void, carrying with it the promise that no civilization had to face the darkness alone. The galaxy that had once tried to destroy humanity for being too dangerous had learned what made humans truly dangerous. Not their weapons or their technology, but their refusal to accept that anything was impossible. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't defeating their enemies. It was teaching them how to grow beyond the need for enemies at all.